Hello, we are live, somewhat on time. My name is Michelle. I'm from Erie River Publishing, and we are here today to just kind of celebrate the live launch of It Calls from the Sky. But for that, what we're going to do is we're going to do a live table reading where we have all of our authors, not all of our authors, but we've got 5 authors today. So we've got 5 authors. We're all going to read different parts of this book and try not to do anything crazy, like not go live. But I think we did go live. Are we live? Menhomum333. I'm assuming yes. It says we're live, which it didn't. It doesn't matter. Yesterday was another day. While we're here, so you're here to watch Erie River Publishing. So you found us on YouTube, but can you find us everywhere? So what I did is I printed out a little exciting worksheet. So we have a couple different places where you can connect with us. We've got erieriverpublishing.com. We are on Twitter, and I am on there as often as I can be, so you can find us at Erie River. Instagram, we're at Erie_River. And then for people that want to support us, because again, we're an indie publisher. We're supporting indie authors. This isn't a get rich quick kind of business. So if you did want to support us, we have free short stories every month. For authors, you can, you can submit to the large anthologies a month early. Plus there's voting, behind the scenes stuff, so you can help pick themes and all that other fun, exciting things. So, but woohoo, we're live. So hello to everyone. We've got a Woo, a Lisa, a G.A. Alexander. Nice to see you. So hi to everybody. So that's how you can find us. So we've got some really awesome books that just came out. This is the third in the It's Called From series. The first one, I better have brought the second book this time. The first one is It Calls From the Forest 1. Now this was our very first of the It Calls From collection. It has 25, I believe, 25, 24, 25 stories, everything themed from the forest. And then we also have It Calls From the Forest 2, which just released in August. Another really awesome collection. And then It Calls From the Sky. We have It Calls From the Sea, which I'm actually reading through right now. We've got a team of readers going through them. We've got so many stories that have been submitted, so it's going to be a great collection. And then coming up in the new year, we're going to have It Calls From the Door. And I'm happy to announce that we are going to be extending the series permanently. We're going to do at least 2 a year, so that we can just keep this ball rolling and just see where It Calls From takes us. For tuning in today, we are going to do an awesome contest, I think, anyways. We're going to do a draw for a paperback copy signed by the one and only Tim Mendes. He's like, oh my gosh, is that what's happening? It is what's happening. So, we're going to do that. So you get a signed copy mailed to you. Plus, you'll get some fancy swag. You're going to get a bookmark for It Calls From the Sky. You're going to get an Erie River bookmark. And then we're also going to do 2 postcards from the sky as well. Now, these are also available on our shop. If you go to the erieriverpublishing.com, we've got a shop. So if you don't win, you can always buy like a gift set that has all of these things involved. We're also going to do 2 other prizes. One's going to be 2 of them are going to be ebooks with all that stuff too. So all you have to do to enter the contest is write on this YouTube page. We would like you to subscribe to YouTube, our YouTube page, my YouTube page, as well as write a little comment about what you're scared of. And if you want some extra entries, you can head over to our Facebook page where there will be a contest link, and you just do the same thing. Like, share it for an extra point, and just write a little comment about what you're scared of. And then you've got 4 entries or 4 little name tag things that'll dig around like Tim did and pull a name out. It's going to be great. So we're going to have lots of ways to win. All right. Well, I feel like we're ready to introduce some of our authors. So let's start with, well, it's Tim's book, not Tim's book, but we're reading for Tim. So let's start with Tim. Are you ready? I think he said yes.
Yeah. Hello. Oh yeah, thanks for reminding everybody that I made a complete hash of that draw the other day.
I didn't. I just minded it. But either way, it was hilarious to watch, and it made me feel better yesterday. So.
Yeah, exactly.
So Tim, tell us about the story we're going to read tonight. Like, just a little elevator pitch, nothing too much, and then like what inspired this story.
This story, On a Wing and a Prayer, it's about it's set during the Second World War, and a plane is going down, and a guy basically, he thinks he's had his chips, but it doesn't quite work out like that. And then some really weird weather conditions and things like that happen. It's set in the Highlands of Scotland, and there's some rather colourful characters that some lucky people are going to voice today.
We'll see how many people actually do the voice.
Yeah. I really want people to do the accents. I think it'd be comedy gold. But it was inspired because I saw the because obviously I was in the first Big Calls from the Forest, and I saw this one open. And it was like, right, I need to come up with something, and I kind of thought, I have these weird ideas of what if somebody else wrote this, and this was basically what if Lovecraft wrote Biggles.
Yeah.
I was kind of thinking along that line, sort of like like your Boy's Own Adventure books that he had with all the daring do and the dashing airman and all this kind of business. Yeah. What if you bunged a bit of cosmic horror into that? And that's basically where it came from.
Oh, so awesome. I enjoyed it. It had like a really cool cosmic like horror vibe, and I knew that I wanted at least one in there. I didn't want everything to be. So
of course,
definitely like I read it and I'm like, putting it over here.
Hey. Exactly. This is it.
Yeah. So very cool. Okay, I'm gonna put you on hold, and I'm gonna go bring over Chris.
See you in a bit.
Yeah, ready, Chris? We're doing it. 1, go.
Wow. So this is live.
This is live. The button says so.
I've seen it. 8 minutes. We're at 8 minutes.
Oh my goodness.
Brilliant. Hi.
So nice seeing you.
Nice to see you.
I know. Like we chat a bit, but I don't actually know what anyone really looks like.
No, it's all done over text messages and things. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So tell us about the story that you've got in It Calls from the Sky, and like what inspired you to write this?
Yeah, so I guess my story is Thorn in my side, and it's really an alien invasion story. I'm a bit of a sucker for the disaster movie, so rather than a single alien, it's the whole shebang, and it turns into a bit of a road trip across Australia, chased obviously by aliens. So that's pretty much the spiel for it. And inspiration-wise, it was actually a dream I had. The main alien concept in it is actually a dream I had sort of last year sometime. And I write these things up on Trello cards, which are like Post-it notes. And I was playing with this one back in March for some other thing. And then it's sort of just like, the call came up and it fit the pitch nicely. So that's how we got to where we are today.
Wow. Well, that's it's really interesting that it's like was inspired by a dream first and then like morphed into this really exciting, I think, a really exciting story. So I hope all the readers enjoy it as well.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. All right, I am knocking you off. We will see you in a few minutes.
Okay.
Because it is Miss D.A. McDonald's turn. Are you ready? Oh yeah, she's ready. She's here.
Oh, I am here.
Nice to see you.
Oh my gosh, it's a miracle.
Don't worry about it. You weren't the. We had like yesterday. I have to just say we had so many weird things that were happening. What our other author Jay was having huge technical glitches, and we were just talking about it when we thought we were live, and then someone wrote in the comments technical glitches. So I was like, yeah, technical glitches. So we thought we were. It was just obviously like the perfect timing on their part.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it never occurred to me to be like, oh, well, what are they talking about? Because we were literally just getting technical glitches for Jay.
Oh, what horrible coincidence. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But
Wow.
still, I feel like we pulled it together. So when
Oh.
it got rid of the like initial nerves of like
Right.
talking, we had been talking the whole time.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Amazing.
Anyways,
I'm glad I wasn't the only one in the awkward boat.
you know what? It's the first year of stuff has
Mhm.
to have these things that happen.
It's
So
true.
okay.
And it's
So-
2020.
Right?
Yeah.
Now
Everything's
for people for 20, everything is forgiven and like, come on. It's been too much. But anyways, for people that didn't tune in yesterday, so didn't actually hear the story, we did end up reading.
Yay.
Your story is the one that we read yesterday. So why don't you give us a little bit of an elevator pitch about what it was? And I do want to hear what kind of inspired this story, because we really like it's an enjoyable story.
Oh, thank you. So the quick synopsis of it would be that a highway patrolman in the Siskiyou Mountains of California stops to investigate a car crash and gets a little more than he anticipated of the supernatural occult variety.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Things escalate pretty quickly. I was inspired by actually. So my dad is a long haul truck driver, and was when I was a kid, and I used to go with him on some of his trips, and we would go through. Yeah, we would go through the Siskiyou Mountains, and it's very dark and very you're far away from civilization. You feel like it's very windy, like you're looking down kind of at these like craggy mountain faces, and there could be almost there's a sense that like anything at all could be out there. And I kind of tried to like take that feeling of like environmental menace and combine that with like I love true crime and I love detective fiction, and tried to kind of create this sort of like mishmash of these two things, like a kind of seething environment and then this cop who is out there by himself and alone. So dealing with something that is totally out of his purview.
Right.
So yeah.
No, it was I think it was really well done. We had a lot of fun with it. And from what I've heard from like some of the reviewers, everyone seems to really enjoy it. So hopefully all the other readers will take
Awesome.
Great. Yeah. All right. Well, nice seeing you. You'll be joining us again in a couple more minutes. I'm just going to go say hi to Kim first and then Joel.
Awesome. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. See you soon. I'm just going to, there we go. I'm always trying not to actually like kick anyone off of the server, but you never know with me. All right, Kim, are you ready? Okay, we got thumbs up, girls and boys and everyone else. Hey!
Hello.
It's Kim from Florida.
Yes, with the sunshine and the pool.
That's amazing.
And
we have
90
autumn
weather in
outside this window. So.
Hmm?
So we just have autumn and leaves outside this window.
I'm jealous. Yeah, we've got 90 degrees in October. It's a little excessive.
Well, Kim, tell us a little bit about your story and what inspired you to write this.
The story is called Rain Dance, and it is about a woman trapped in an abusive marriage and shall we call them a merry band of unlikely rescuers who sweep her out of it, Erie River style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Too much away. Inspired by this merry band is a myth that I have long loved and read on and have many, many books on, and seemed like a good excuse to trot them out.
That's perfect. No, I really like this was a really one that kind of caught you in it because like this, the main character, you just, I don't know how to explain it. You just want to shake / help her out. So it's good to see that someone does.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. She's
That's
not going to help
perfect.
herself.
no, exactly. All right, so you hang tight. I'm going to bring Joel on, and then we will have all of us together reading the story. Okay. Boop. Wait. Boop. All right. Yeah. Okay. We got thumbs up. People. I didn't even have to ask. How are you?
I'm pretty good, thank you. How are you?
I'm good.
Excellent. Thank you
Great.
for having me on.
Well, yeah, it's nice to see you because I don't see you very often. I don't see anyone actually.
I'm very, very reclusive and secretive.
So tell us about your story.
So my story is called Flying Home. It's about a lady called Emma who is on what she thinks is just a kind of standard boring flight. And then she finds out that another passenger is taking a particular interest in her. And as the story develops, we find out that there are some very, very strange things about this particular passenger, and that his interest in her goes far beyond, what you would hope a weird, creepy stranger would be paying
That's
interest in.
one way of putting it.
That's one way. I don't want to,
No, don't give it
spoil
away.
anything. But
You're good. What inspired it though? Like, was this a dream like Chris? Or
so, funnily enough, and I'm not sure whether you remember this or not, but I'd been working on a story for this anthology for quite a while, and then had a bit of a kind of crash right at the end. And I was like, I hate that story. I don't want to finish it. I'm really struggling with it. I want a new story. And I think there was something like 5 days left in the call or something thereabouts. And I decided to just start from scratch, which is not something I normally do. So I can remember the inspiration behind the original story very well, which was it was a similar-ish story of a bunch of characters on a plane, and then they find out that one of the passengers is essentially an imposter, is not basically not a human being. And the idea was just me thinking, what's the scariest thing that could happen on a flight that isn't it, falling out the sky? And to me, it was being trapped on board with something that you don't understand, but is not human.
Yeah. And that would be like, if you think about it in context, crazy.
Yes.
Could you imagine being on an airplane and all of a sudden you're like,
well, what I really liked about it in the original concept was that there would be a question mark throughout the whole story of whether it was actually true or whether a number of passengers were just making it up, paranoid or whatever. And by the end of the story, you still wouldn't know, even though all this crazy stuff had happened, whether it was actually just all paranoia or whether there was this kind of malign influence.
I like this one better.
I liked the concept very much, but it just wouldn't come out. There was too much to kind of explain, too many conveniences and contrivances.
Yeah.
And so at the kind of, at the 11th hour, I just thought, how can I still play around with that concept? Because I think you'd agree that concept still kind of makes a play in my current story. But I kind of streamlined it, cut out a lot of the excess, requirements, and ended up with Flying Home.
Sorry, I had to ask a question in the private chat because I'm like, I can't remember who. We had a little change, but no, the story, honestly, when I read it the first time, I was just like, yes. It takes me a while because I have to read through all of the maybes first before I actually make decisions, but it was like the top of the maybe pile. I was like, we didn't get a lot of, strangely enough, we did not get a lot of airplane horror. And I was expecting, not like I was expecting hundreds of them, but I was expecting a lot more than we got. I think we got maybe 5 in total out of the hundreds that came in. So I was just like, we need airplane horror, and this is awesome. So I know that a couple reviewers have already commented on this one. So
yeah, I've been very flattered by the
going
reviews.
I think this one's going to be like, this is a good. I don't know why I keep saying good like that.
I don't mind. You can keep.
Hopefully
you can keep
everyone
going.
will enjoy it. That's all I'm
Yeah.
keeping.
I'd hope so.
Okay, I'm going to bring everyone back, and then we are going to grab our scripts or books or whatever you're reading it, and we are going to give Tim a little screen time as the narrator. Is everyone here? I think
Yep.
right? This is us. 5 plus me. Yes, we're all here.
You haven't lost anyone. Yeah.
I know, you never know. But hi, everyone, for joining us again. We're about to read Tim's story from It Calls from the Sky. So what's going to happen is everyone's going to be taking a part. Some of us will have multiple voices. Some of us will only have one. Tim's going to narrate it, and we're going to read it in full. So buckle up, enjoy yourself. We can see you if you're making any comments. So if you want to ask any questions, we'll get back to them right after we're done reading. So, and if anyone wants to put themselves on mute between readings, like when it's not your turn, you can, but just remember to unmute yourself. That's the only thing, because I have a habit of not remembering buttons. All right. Yeah. All right, Tim, take it away.
Cool. Okay. Yep. This is On a Wing and a Prayer. October the 29th, 1940, somewhere over the North Sea. The rain came from out of nowhere. It pelted the cockpit of Flight Sergeant Mike Warren's Hurricane in fat globs, making the already poor visibility much worse. Lining up the ring and bead sight on the incoming Messerschmitt, he squeezed the triggers. The roar of the guns was deafening, and his vision danced as the reverberation shook him to his standard issue boots. All was clear and bright when the number 17 squadron scrambled from RAF Castletown. But, as everyone knows, the weather in the Scottish Highlands moves faster than the ruddy Luftwaffe, and it wasn't long before they were flying in conditions akin to pea soup. Radar had picked up German bombers flanked by a squadron of fighters crossing the North Sea. This wasn't surprising. What was surprising was they were this far north, though the rising winds could probably account for them being slightly off course. His volley of machine gun fire peppered the wing of his opponent. It should have been a direct hit, but the wing-mounted machine guns were never all that accurate. Sometimes Mike thought he would do better poking his arm out the cockpit and firing with his trusty service revolver. The Messerschmitt returned fire, so Mike yanked the throttle and climbed sharply. The rain of lead caught his rear fuselage a glancing blow, but nothing too drastic. The poor blighter next to him wasn't so lucky. Bullets punctured his fuel tank, and his cockpit erupted into flame, roasting him alive. Mike cursed. The dead man had been a friend. All of the dead men had been friends. Glancing around at the melee, his mouth went dry with fear. It wasn't looking good. The Luftwaffe had superior numbers and seemed to have luck on their side. He was one of the last Allied birds in the sky. Mike's father had flown during the Great War, and the plucky old bugger had narrowly survived being shot down on 3 separate occasions. When he was young, Mike asked if he had God on his side. Mr. Warren Sr. had smiled and looked wistful, but never answered. More bullets raked in his direction. He banked to the right, nearly colliding with one of the bombers that they were there to shoot down. It would have made his mission a success, but he would have rather found a less fatal way to do it. He unloaded the 4 20mm cannons on his wings, and they punched huge holes in the grey skin of the bomber. None of his hits were critical, but with a bit of luck, he wouldn't make it to land. Mike gave himself a pat on the back and climbed out of its path. As he rose above the target, he looked at his handiwork. Yes, it did indeed look like he'd done it. His momentary lapse in concentration nearly proved fatal, however. One of the Messerschmitts had him in its sights, and it raked his left wing. Now, his maneuverability was severely compromised. The only way he would survive the skirmish is if he could have kept moving, but he was now a sitting duck. When war broke out, Mike told his father that he was joining the RAF to follow in his jet stream, so to speak. His father was proud, of course, but he knew that his son's chances of going the distance were slim. After all, he wouldn't have gone the distance if he hadn't had a little help. A father's duty is to guide and teach a son how to be the best man that he could be. So he couldn't very well object to his desire to fight for king and country. There were other things he could do, though, to aid his only heir's survival. When Mike went off for training, his father gave him a good luck charm and a special prayer. As another burst of fire slammed into his plane, Mike reached for the charm that he kept around his neck on an old bootlace. He pressed it tightly against his chest, where it felt like a shard of ice. Flames erupted behind him, the wooden fabric fuselage burning up like kindling. It was too late to bail, and he was miles out to sea, so a crash landing was out the question. His number was up. Mike muttered the words his father taught him all those years ago. The wind gathered in strength, and a freak storm battered the combatants. Lightning flashed. Hailstones rattled off their wings like someone had emptied a sack of ball bearings at the stratosphere. Two of the Messerschmitts were blown into each other. They burst into a fireball, sending debris in all directions. A chunk of grey metal slammed into Mike's one good wing, taking a huge bite out of it. If he wasn't already done for, he certainly was now. Mike went into a nosedive. Death was inevitable. The plummeting plane produced a huge roar as it rocketed towards the waves far below. The charm hadn't worked. He ripped it off his neck and tossed it aside in frustration. Yet still he kept on muttering the strange prayer as the sea rose up to meet him. November the 6th, 1940, Killimster, Caithness, Scotland. Algernon McTavish looked up at the sky and shivered. Even for a hardened Scot, it was bleak. And since the freak storm just over a week ago, the weather had been even more savage than usual. In the 40-odd years that he'd run the moderately sized sheep farm at Killimster, for he'd never seen the weather like it. Still, it meant that there had been fewer German bombers in the sky than normal. Placing two frozen fingers in the dark slit between his bushy ginger beard, he blew out a series of sharp whistles. His faithful sheepdog Bonnie answered with a bark and proceeded to try and round up the frenzied sheep. The poor creatures had been driven half demented by the fierce winds and horizontal hailstones. At first, the strange noise sounded like a particularly persistent mosquito. A low, continuous whine. Al looked around, cap in hand, but there was nothing to swat at, and besides, it was the wrong time of year for the little devils. Then the whine started to get louder.
Oh, Christ.
Al panicked.
A sodding bomb.
But there were no planes in the sky. He looked around in confusion as the whine built into a roar. It was the sort of noise usually attributed to a downed plane, but there was nothing that he could see. Boom! The ground in the adjacent field erupted, soil bursting high into the air. Al swore oaths in pure Scottish Gaelic as he dropped to the floor with his hands over his head. He awaited the coming explosion, but nothing happened. Bonnie barked in a wild frenzy and jumped at the fence. Al looked up, thanking the Lord, and looked over at his dog. She was snarling at something in the next field. Pulling himself up and brushing sheep droppings off his tweed overcoat, Al made his way carefully towards his dog.
Hush now, girl.
He whispered in calming tones. Bonnie looked at him. He had never seen a look like the one in his dog's eyes before. It was a look of sheer terror.
What's got you so spooked, lass?
Al approached the fence and peered over. About 50 yards away, something large and rectangular had slammed into the ground, half burying itself. When something hits the ground at such velocity, you expect fire. Al scratched his head. The object wasn't even hot. In fact, it was freezing cold. He hopped over the fence with his eyes fixated on whatever the hell had just landed in his field. So rapt with attention was he that he nearly entangled himself on the barbed wire. The ground steamed and hissed. The object was evidently much colder than the frozen ground he walked upon, which in itself was a mystery. The ground was chillier than his mother-in-law. Finally reaching the object, he knelt down to get a better look. What was inside nearly turned his ginger locks the purest white, and a second later he was charging across the field with Bonnie at his heels. Climbing into his tractor, he turned the ignition and headed towards the nearest centre of civilization, the town of Wick. He needed to get in touch with the RAF at the airbase there, pronto. Though he didn't expect them to believe him for a single second, when he would say that one of their pilots, glowing orange, encased in a perfectly rectangular block of ice, had just landed in his field and scared his sheep. No, he expected them to check his breath for whiskey. November the 9th, 1940, RAF Wick, Caithness, Scotland. Group Captain Blake buttocks were numb. The hard seat of the Austin K4 troop transport vehicle had turned the long journey from RAF Sutton-upon-Hull to the far end of Scotland into an exercise in endurance. He was the only passenger, yet the telltale aroma of sweat, boot polish, machine oil and fear from hundreds of national servicemen still lingered like a dark cloud. Blake was more accustomed to upgraded vehicles, but none were available to ferry him up to RAF Wick at such short notice. He must have read the report on the strange events that had taken place since the 6th about 100 times by now. Even when he knew the document back to front, it was either that or share banalities with his driver Evans. Yeah, he was a nice enough chap, but there was only so much conversation to be had with a man with a lower IQ than a mug of mess hall tea. The main issue with Evans was that he didn't seem to understand the word classified. No matter how many times Blake changed the subject, the talkative Welshman kept on asking him why, in all that is sacred, did he have to go to Wick so damn urgently. He wasn't exactly the hub of the war effort. Blake was saying nothing, as loose lips sink ships and all that. Even if he did want to reveal his mission, he was almost certain that his driver would think he was pulling his leg, for nobody would give credence to such a wild story. Hell, he wouldn't believe it fully until he saw the chap with his own two eyes. It was beyond belief. A pilot who was shot down over the North Sea, believed KIA, turns up a week later in a farmer's field and is glowing bright orange and encased in ice. If that wasn't unbelievable enough, the fact that the man subsequently defrosted and was now alive and well in a makeshift quarantine pushed it firmly into the realms of fantasy. As the rattling vehicle neared its final destination, he was treated to first-hand evidence that something weird was indeed happening. It had been reported that, since the 7th, the base and its surrounding area had been pummeled by a freak snowstorm. Blake got the driver to pull over and jumped out of the cab.
Bugger me!
Blake muttered to himself. They had stopped at a perfect vantage point to witness the anomaly for themselves. Below them, covering the windswept, heather-blanketed land, was a perfect circle of deep snow. It radiated for what looked to be a mile in diameter, with Wick at the epicenter. A brutal storm raged and lightning flashed. Blake walked a couple of 100 yards down the road, with Evans tagging along behind him. Eventually, he reached the threshold of the storm. It was uncanny. It went from a perfectly clear road to a 15-inch drift without so much as a spray of powder.
Well, will you look at that?
Evans said with his mouth agape in wonder.
It looks like a bloody snow globe.
Blake was miles away. In all his years as a pilot, he had never seen such bizarre weather.
I was just saying that it looks like a snow globe, sir,
replied Evans.
Quite right.
Blake said distractedly.
Do you think we can get through this lot?
He swept his blue-coated arm dramatically over the frigid landscape.
No problem, boyo. Sir.
Evans stumbled, turning red in the face for such a rank faux pas. He was okay, Blake didn't notice. Or if he did, he decided to let it slide.
Right. Shall we press on then?
Yes, sir. I'll have you there in no time.
Evans grinned. Driver Evans was wrong. Very wrong. Less than 500 yards down the road, they became bogged down and had to dig the front left wheel out of a pothole. It took them several hours to make it to Wick, and in the end, they left the vehicle at Algernon McTavish's farm and trudged on foot the rest of the way. By the time Blake arrived, it was dark, and he was frozen to the core. It appeared that the storm raged with increasing ferocity the closer they got to the epicenter, where the block housing Flight Sergeant Warren was. The guards on the gate let them inside after a brief check of credentials, and they ushered them into the mess hall, where they were to be met by Dr. Blythe. He was the man who had been the sole person tasked with looking after Warren since his miraculous resurrection. Since it looked like they would be stuck in Wick for some time, Blake gave Evans leave to go to the NAFI for a couple of well-earned pints, and Evans could have kissed him. It also fulfilled a secondary motive, getting the nosy devil out of earshot. Since Blake had read the report ad nauseum, Dr. Blythe got straight down to business.
I don't know what to tell you, sir. I've never seen anything like it. When he was brought in, we had him thawed out using paraffin heaters. I thought I was to be conducting an autopsy, but...
then buffed her wire-rimmed spectacles on her tunic.
Did he just wake up there and then?
Blake was scribbling notes on the back of one of the papers in his file.
No, not right away.
Blythe
We
replied.
had him on the slab when it happened.
Dr. Blythe had just finished her evening rations and was scrubbed up and ready to cut Warren open to examine the orange glow that seemed to pulse and radiate from the cadaver. She had her scalpel in her hand, ready to make the first incision from neck to navel, when Warren's eyes snapped open and swiveled wildly in their sockets.
Blimey.
Blake said after hearing the tale.
Bet that scared the bejesus out of you.
Not
Blythe
half, sir.
continued.
I nearly jumped out of my skin. After crying out in apparent agony, he sat bolt upright, then started asking where he was and how he got there. I was dumbfounded.
Could there have
The man had
been
stone
some
dead.
kind of mistake, Doctor?
Blake cocked an eyebrow.
No.
Blythe replied flatly.
There was no mistake. The man hadn't breathed and his heart hadn't pumped since he was defrosted. He was dead.
Very well.
Take my reputation
Blake
on it.
smiled.
What did he say after he came to his senses?
The doctor sighed and pinched the bridge of her nose with a thumb and forefinger.
He told me a wild tale indeed. We recorded it on reel-to-reel, which you're welcome to listen to at your leisure.
As the
But
doctor
I'll give you the
paused
bare
and licked her
bones.
lips, a young airman came charging into the room, calling Dr. Blythe's name. Michelle.
Yep.
Young
Doctor,
Edmund?
come quick.
Doc,
There
so
we go.
quick. Oh my gosh. Can I tell you that I didn't highlight this part. Doctor,
What is it, Airman?
Blake
it's Warren, sir. He's dead.
and Blythe looked at each other, then followed the youngster out of the mess and across the courtyard to the main building. The storm had risen to an almost apocalyptic level, snow and hail swirling in a chaotic dance. The troops had taken cover under tent flaps and other structures, their poor faces whipped red raw by the onslaught. Warren was indeed dead. He had cut his own throat with a penknife. According to the man who had found him, Warren had been ranting and raving for the previous hour. He had been screaming to be allowed free. He bellowed at the top of his voice that,
He comes for me.
apparently, the rising storm was the source of his agitation. Dr. Blythe nodded, as though she had heard him say such things before. For the time being, Blake was in the dark. The guard in the hastily outfitted quarantine room said that he was alerted when it became suddenly quiet. Blake asked him why he didn't check on the man when he was carrying on, to which the airman replied they had been instructed by Blythe not to have any contact with him. a fact that Blythe backed up, as she wasn't sure that the odd orange glow wasn't contagious. Once Warren had been stretchered out, Blythe decided that he would conduct the autopsy in the morning. Blake agreed, as he was shattered from his journey. In the meantime, he had one of the men kit him out with a room that had a bed, a desk, and a reel-to-reel machine. Blake was very interested to hear what Warren had to say. Blake sat in the hastily...
Hold on one
Yep.
second. Kim, we're having a little bit of a weird delay on your audio.
Not
On
sure
me?
what to do about that.
Oh,
No,
Kim.
me.
No, it's on Kim's audio. Are you
I'm
on
on
Wi-Fi,
Wi-Fi.
or are
Is
you
that doing it?
on? I don't know. Because we've got a couple of people that just mentioned yours is lagging, and then after you're done talking, Tim starts. Well, before you're done talking, Tim starts in, and he's talking over you.
Maybe a slight pause before he starts
Hmm.
talking. I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah, I've
Yeah,
not
I'll do
noticed
that.
that on
Yeah.
our
I'll give it a
side.
couple of beats before
Is it
carrying on, yeah.
is it still lagging right now? I'm asking our audience. Audience, is it still lagging for
See, it
Kim
sounds
right now?
absolutely fine to me. Yeah. Bizarre.
On this end too.
Oh,
Oh, apparently I'm desynced too.
We're just gonna rotate.
and actually, I'm guessing. So all those comments for me, at least, appeared at the same time. But I'm guessing that
Yeah, same.
that they were typed at different times.
Ah, the
Michelle's
wonders
audio
of
might be-
technology.
Audio's fine. Kim's is fine. So we're getting like multiple thoughts here. Hold on. Maybe if I do this. Okay, is Michelle's still off? If I put something on. Maybe it's a lag of refresh.
Yeah, I was going to say refreshing the page. Oh,
Okay,
no, people seem to be thinking that it's better now.
let's give it one more. Okay, it's working again.
Cool. We're fine now. Cool.
Off we go.
Excellent.
Now wait, where were we?
We've
Uh,
just
this-
started the new section.
Start
Blake-
a new section, yeah, with Blake in the hastily
Blake Pat?
converted store cupboard.
All right.
It's about the interview with Blythe and
yeah.
what's his face. Yeah.
No spoilers.
Oh yeah.
I know, like some people haven't read this.
Oh, yeah.
Hello.
Right.
All right, and
And go. Blake sat in the hastily converted store cupboard by the dim light of an oil lamp. He had in front of him a stack of paper and a pencil stub. Blythe had warned him that Warren spun a wild story. So in preparation, he had poured himself a large scotch. Once he had sat back and lit a cigarette, he hit play. The tape crackled and hissed before settling down and becoming audible. Dr. Blythe introduced herself and gave the date and time before asking Warren how he felt.
Not good, Doc.
Warren answered in a raspy Cornish burr.
I understand that you keep burning up and keep having to be placed in ice baths.
Blythe asked.
That's right. I feel like my fingers are on fire. Why is it so hot in here?
It isn't. Look, you can see my breath.
Oh,
Warren sounded sullen.
Could you tell me what happened before you were found in Mr. McTavish's field?
I'll try, but I'm not completely sure myself.
Blake could hear the chair under Warren creak as he fidgeted uncomfortably.
My father flew in the last war. Did you know that?
Yes, we've spoken to your CO and he gave us a rundown of your background.
Blythe shifted some papers that rustled and crackled on the recording.
He survived several times when it looked like his number was up. He put it down to the protection of he who walks on the winds. I didn't believe a word of it until...
Go on.
Blythe prompted after a short pause.
My plane was done for. Before I left to join up, he gave me this charm, see? It looked like a kind of wonky star. Kept it around my neck. He also taught me a kind of prayer. God, I wish he hadn't. Anyway, when I was going down, I grabbed the star and I said the prayer, and I didn't think it would work, so I ripped off the charm and I threw it down in anger. What a fool.
Warren suddenly became agitated.
Have you recovered my plane? I must get the star back.
No chance of that, I'm afraid. Your hawker will be at the bottom of the sea by now.
Blythe stated without emotion. Blake could tell by the tone of her voice that she wasn't swallowing Warren's story.
Then I'm doomed.
Can you tell me how you got from crashing into the North Sea to winding up a week later in a farmer's field?
You won't believe me.
Try
Warren
me.
sniffed. No.
Okay, Doc, if you insist. He came for me.
Who did?
The Windwalker. A storm the likes you've never seen slammed into us. All the German planes were slapped out the sky like someone swatting flies. All around me was chaos, but it was like I was suspended in a bubble of calm. Like the eye of the storm, something lifted me from the cockpit. I thought it was a guardian angel. Boy, was I wrong. The storm moulded into this awful shape with glowing eyes.
Glowing?
Yeah, the same colour as my skin. They were two hot coals in the sky, but gave off no heat. It laughed at me. It was such a horrible sound. It told me, well, not so much told as put the knowledge in my head that I'd made a mistake. To call him without protection was to give your very soul to him. I struggled and fought, but it was no good. My arms and legs were bound by wispy ropes of vapour. The thing took me in its clutches and raced off into the atmosphere. I don't know how I breathed. He must have done something to me. For what seemed like an eternity, we raced through distant skies and lightless voids. He laughed while I screamed. I saw things no human eyes should see. Horrible, horrible things. I saw creatures that shouldn't be. I saw atrocities committed in the creature's unholy name. I saw...
The silence in the room hung heavy on the tape, and only the faint tick of a clock could be discerned.
Eventually, I managed to escape. I don't know how. Maybe he let me go. Maybe all this is part of his scheme.
Scheme? What scheme?
Blythe sounded like her mouth was dry. Warren laughed humorously.
I dread to imagine. I can hear the storm outside and I think he's come back for me. Anyway, next thing I know, I was falling. Then I woke up with you waving a scalpel in my face.
You said the creature had a name.
Yes, Doctor. Ithaca.
Ithaca.
Have you ever heard of the Wendigo, Doctor?
Click. Blake turned off the machine, his head spinning. What he heard sounded like the ravings of a madman. But what other explanation was there? Clearly something very strange had occurred to the poor man, though unfortunately it looked like he had taken the truth to his grave. The strong alcohol, plus the long journey, had taken their toll, and his eyelids grew heavy. After extinguishing the lamp, he fell onto the cot and fell into a fitful slumber. Evans had partaken of more than just a couple of pints. The rough-looking chap was as pissed as a newt. He wandered the corridors of the barracks, swaying mildly, singing the green, green grass of home at the top of his voice. So the base had kindly given him a temporary bed in one of the auxiliary dorms. The storm had nearly blown him to Orkney as he crossed the yard. He was glad of being given a bed, as the last thing he wanted was to have been stuck out in that lot. The dorm was plunged into darkness. Since the weather had taken out most of the electricity earlier in the day, he'd been given a lamp, but in his drunkenness he'd left the wretched thing in the naffy. There was no way in hell he was going back to get it. Nobody was using the dorm at that moment, as the auxiliary unit was unable to get back to base and was staying in Inverness until the storm passed. This meant he had the place to himself, and he recalled being given the bed in the far corner. Evans figured that he would head in that direction, then fall on whatever bed he made it to. As long as he was close, what did it matter? Taking a box of matches from out of his pocket, he struck one, bathing the room in a dim light. He spotted his kit bag, pointed his feet towards it, and started weaving. The match burned down quickly and burnt his fingers. Evans cursed, blowing on his singed digits, and it took a while before he realized that the dim glow hadn't died with the match. He spun around unsteadily and came face to face with the corpse of Flight Sergeant Warren. Evans screamed.
Ah!
Warren reached out an icy hand and grabbed him by the hair. His touch burned, and Evans could feel the frostbite eating into his flesh. As the driver struggled, Warren held out his other hand, where a miniature storm played in his palm, before growing into a mountainous icicle. Evans was powerless as the frigid weapon slammed through his eyeball and into his brain. The sound of an alarm bell jolted Blake awake. Before he could question what the bloody hell was going on, the young airman, the one who'd found Warren's corpse, came bounding into the room.
Sir!
He
come
yelped
quickly,
hysterically.
sir.
What the devil is going on, Airman? Don't you bloody knock!
Blake snapped.
Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. It's Evan, sir. Some
What?
buggers killed him, sir.
Blake boomed, the haze of sleep finally lifting. Before he could answer, something large and heavy slammed into the wall of the room from outside.
What the
Plaster
bloody
crashed
hell
to the
was
floor. Carry on.
Sorry, no, that was it.
Let's go on.
What the bloody hell was that?
Blake yelled.
I don't know, sir.
That's all right.
Ah,
Herman Jones stammered.
should I go
Blake
find
thought
out?
for a second.
Yes, on the double. I'll see to Evans. Where did it happen?
Jones started to take off at a run down the corridor after informing him that Evans was in the barracks. Blake headed towards the murder site. More objects slammed into the building, and the ground itself was shaking. Brick dust and filth rained down from the ceiling in torrents, and what lights were still functioning on the backup generator flickered and sizzled. He rounded the corner, stepping into an area that was completely without light. He whipped his flashlight from his inside pocket and pointed it into the gloom. It wasn't far to the barracks, so he broke into a steady jog. He was nearing a crossroads when a noise stopped him dead in his tracks. It was the sound of gunfire.
What the hell is going on?
He said to himself. As he looked around, a figure came shambling around the corner. Blake shone the light in their face as he reached for his revolver.
Dr. Blythe? What the devil is going on? You nearly gave me a bally heart attack.
Blake panted. Dr. Blythe?
Sorry.
Blythe wheezed.
We need to get the hell out of here.
Why? What's happening, man?
As Dr. Blythe opened his mouth to speak, a shard of wickedly sharp ice burst through the front of his head. Blake bellowed in shock as he was showered in blood, brains, and fragments of skull. A blanket of frost started to engulf the corridor. The growth cracked and hissed as black veins of ice spread along the wall, advancing towards him. Blake drew his revolver and backed away. Blythe had frozen where he stood, like some grotesque sculpture, and from behind him stumbled the reanimated body of Warren. His eyes were blank, and his mouth hung slack. Each step he made crunched and ground. Sensing that it was of no use to talk to the man, Blake didn't hesitate in pumping all 6 rounds into the walking cadaver, but none of them stopped it coming. Blake backed away as he reloaded. Warren kept advancing, and so did the encroaching ice. It was taking over the base, and with each second, the ice grew in thickness. It was like being chased by a glacier. Blake figured his bullets would be of no use, and he turned and sprinted back down the corridor. Another colossal impact shook the building, nearly sending him sprawling. Using the wall to steady himself, he carried on running. After turning the corner, he nearly collided with Jones and a small group of panicked-looking airmen.
Thank God, sir.
Jones breathed.
Outside, sir. There's this thing.
Blake had doubled over to catch his breath. He wasn't as young as he once was. Before he could say anything, one of the other men called out in alarm. Warren was coming around the corner, with the ice still following. Jones grabbed Blake by the lapel and started to run. He screamed at the others to follow, but they decided to put their faith in bullets. A very foolish choice. Each man fired off a burst of rounds. They slammed into Warren, but it didn't even make him flinch. Blake and Jones looked around just in time to see Warren open his mouth and belch forth a gale of ice shards. The knife-like objects tore huge chunks of flesh from the brave airmen as they smashed bones and severed limbs. In seconds, the men looked like they'd been minced. A shard slammed into Jones's back, and he flew forward with such force that his ribs cracked from slamming into the wall at the end of the corridor. Blake flung the lad's arm over his shoulder, hauling him through the double doors and into the storm. What Blake saw as he stepped outside was a nightmare. A huge cyclone of ice and snow had formed itself into a massive insect-like shape. It had spindly legs and burning orange eyes. Planes and trucks were sent flying through the air as it swept its enormous claws back and forth. With the last vestiges of his sanity, he dragged Jones into the nearest shelter, the medical tent, and lay him on the bed. It was no good. Jones's lungs had been punctured. He coughed up thick, black blood, then lay still. Blake cried. Laughter made him peek around the door flap. Warren had walked outside and approached the creature, his arms raised in worship and his head tilted back. The beast took him up in one of its hands, and the next second they exploded in a plume of snow. The wind dropped almost instantly. The clouds dispersed and the stars came out. Blake curled up in a ball and gibbered. The RAF Wick tragedy was never made public, and top brass passed it off as the result of German bombs. There was a full inquiry, but the findings were suppressed. As for Group Captain Blake, he was given a Section 8 discharge and was sent to live out the rest of the war in a sanatorium. He perished a year later during an uncommonly cold winter. The end. Well done, everybody.
Good job.
Yeah.
We made it through.
Yeah. That wasn't too bad. That went all right.
Oh.
Yeah.
A
I
little
love
technical
the
glitches.
Texas Welshman was hilarious.
I could not do a Welsh accent to save my life, so I'm sorry.
Oh, it was gold.
Yeah.
The cowboy Welshman.
Cowboy Welshman. I love it. There. Love it.
That's excellent. Well, thanks everyone for participating and like reading. It's always kind of nerve-wracking to read off of paper sometimes, especially when it's not your own story. So I'm glad everyone really was up for participating. That's a lot of fun. We've got a few people that joined us. So hello,
Excellent.
everybody. Does anybody, we're going to do a little question and answer period. So if you do have any questions for our panelists, you can see everyone's names. You can ask them something directly or something, and I'll pick someone to answer if you don't have someone specific. And a lot of people are going, woohoo, good jobs. I'm enjoying that.
Oh, I've just found the comments. I was looking at the private chat. I've only just found it.
Jeez Louise. For people that don't know, I gave everyone a tutorial of where the comments were at the beginning. But we've got lots of
well, there's always one, isn't there?
Yeah, exactly. So we've got one question right now coming up. Why don't we see, why don't we all give our little idea of how long it takes to write something? Let's start with, we'll start with Joel because he's immediate to my left or right, depending on where you're looking.
Yeah, so I'm very much a plotter, if people are familiar with the plotter and pantser terms. So I spend a very, very long time thinking before I actually write anything. So usually before I start writing, I have a pretty good idea of almost everything that happens. and that period might take sometimes if it's particularly good, it might be 1 day or 2 days that I'm planning it and then I'm ready to write it. Sometimes it might be a month before I'm actually ready to start properly trying to get the story out. Once I'm writing, I would say broadly I look at about 500 words an hour. It's not consistent. Some days I'm absolutely terrible and I can barely get anything. Some days I can do a bit more than that, but I'd say that's my average.
All right, Chris, what about you?
Yeah, pretty much the same. In fact, I'm also planning things out. I would say my story for this anthology probably took me a couple of weeks of elapsed time, ignoring the editing time that took probably 5 times longer.
I know,
But,
right? The editing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So yeah, probably 8 hours a day for about 2 weeks. I would say is the rough time it takes to knock a sort of 8,000 word story out.
Yeah, yours was one of the longer ones, not in a bad way, but just.
You should have seen the first cut.
I believe it. Kim, what about you?
So I'm so far the only pantser in the group, and I have a tendency to I have a tendency to push deadlines. I actually made this one a little early, which is good because it needed some work. But average, I take a couple of days to a week to sort it out, and then ignore it for a while until my calendar says it's coming up, and then sit down and write frantically.
Yeah.
I have one due on Tuesday. It's 5,000 words. So far, it's 2,000, and it's fighting me every step of the way.
Oh my
But it will
goodness.
get done.
Yeah.
Good on you. Tim, what about you?
I'm a complete and total pantser. But I'm kind of the opposite to Kim. I give myself these ridiculously harsh deadlines. I like, right, I want to get that done. I've got a week. Do it. Otherwise, I won't do anything.
Yeah.
If I don't set myself these ridiculous deadlines, I'll just sit posting stupid pictures of octopus online all day. But once I tend to just get ideas and just sit down and write it. I don't really plot anything. I'll just get an idea and just sort of go and see what happens. That one took about three or 4 days. About a week. It would say about a week with all the editing, because that always takes longer. Going back and basically tidying it up, because I tend to write in a stream of consciousness kind of way, and some of it can just be right. That doesn't make any sense. Cut that out. So yeah, that's basically how I approach everything. And I have a very bad tendency of starting off things. I mean, there's a running joke with a couple of the other authors that if I start writing a drivel, it'll turn into a novella. Because that's basically what happens. Yeah.
I feel that.
Yeah.
How about you, CA?
So I think that it probably takes me about an hour to outline something, because I do plan to some degree, but I know that there are things that I'm going to write through discovery. So I'm kind of a plotzer, the pantser, like planner, kind of mixed together. And then actual writing time, I think this story took me a week, but it was probably like 4 hours of writing time. And then I have to work it in between everything. I have a kid and a day job. And then after I'm done, my sister beta read it for me. And then she was like, you should fix this. And I was like, okay. And then
Sisters are the worst, but also the best, because mine does the same thing.
Yeah, it was pretty great. She told me specifically, she was like, you need to make them sound more like cops. And I was like, oh God, okay. Like, let me go look up some cop lingo.
Yes, I.
Yeah. Yeah. So
I had to do that with that. I had to look up 1940s British airman slang.
Oh God. Thrilling.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yay, internet.
Exactly. I thought this the other day. It's like, could you imagine, like back in the olden days, before before Wikipedia, how much people had to have to go to the library and get, look things up like this.
Yes, I can, because I'm 50 and I did that. So
Hey.
thank you.
Nice. That's dedication. That.
Yeah, exactly.
It helped that I worked in a library.
Yeah.
Ah, right. Yeah.
Mm.
All right,
Excellent.
we've got a couple more questions. This one's specifically for Tim.
Hello.
Your stories seem to have a great deal of well done research. How does that affect your writing timeline? Do you go back after writing and add the authentic touches? I think you just touched base on this kind of.
Yeah. No, I tend to do that right at the beginning. It's like that's what took this one slightly longer. It's like right at the beginning. I tend to do it as I go along, and it's like I needed to get the specifications of like the Hurricane and Messerschmitt and what type of guns they had. You know, because there will be some. You know, there will be somebody somewhere who goes, they didn't have 20mm guns. They had this gun. So I needed to make sure that was right. And I tend to do that as I go. Yeah, my browser history is always entertaining because there's always some really bizarre subjects. But I did that quite. Yeah, that one took more than average research. Often I choose subjects that don't need a lot because I'm lazy, or they're about subjects that I know about. So, yeah. But World War II, you've got to kind of get the details right, haven't you? Which is,
Yeah.
you know.
All right, we've got another. I think we got two more. So this one's what inspired you guys to start writing short stories and which authors have influenced you? So let's start with Kim this time and we'll go. Sorry.
Is that an official term?
Just sound
I'm
effects.
a half-year-old man. Like this is how I. That is official. That's how it's done.
I've been writing short stories for about as long as I can remember. For a while, it was unhappy childhood, so it was a way to sort of escape. And then once I got a feel for it, I really dove in. It wasn't until a couple of years ago I started trying to get published. And since then, I've had 78 short stories and Rebels published. So
Awesome.
yeah,
Damn.
it's fun. Last year was I don't know, there was something like 40 in 3 months. It was amazing. Which authors have influenced me? Most everyone I read has something that I gain out of it. Charles DeLint is a favorite. I read one of his books called The Dreaming Place and put it down and said, how the hell did he do that? And started learning more. So yeah, Charles DeLint, Neil Gaiman, just about anybody in the urban myth field. Love them all.
Very cool. Well, I did do Tim, I guess.
Yeah, I was when I decided I was going to write, it's because I kind of I've always written on and off, but I was a chef, so it was always things I'd scribbled in the back of like work diaries. I've got a spinal condition, which meant I kind of had to give up my job in kitchens, and I was sulking, as you do. And I decided to cheer myself up, which is something I do from time to time. If I'm sulking, I'll get out the Lovecraft. And I was reading. It was The Color Out of Space, and I thought, oh, I've got a really cool idea. And I thought, well, I've got nothing better to do with my time. I may as well write it. And that turned into that was a novel length. And I'd forgotten how to write completely. It was all over everywhere. I need to go back and fix it because the story is fine, but it's just the grammar's all over the shop.
Yeah.
But once I'd finished that, I kind of had the feel for it. I was remembering everything again, and I was doing a lot more reading, which I think you need to do. It's the only way you get better, isn't it? Is reading and picking up by reading other people's work. And so I was reading a lot of not just Lovecraft, but people like Clark Ashton Smith, Thomas Ligotti, Caitlin R. Kiernan, all that kind of, there's weird fiction authors and cosmic horror authors. And I thought I'll give it. I know most of them do short story stuff, and I just thought, well, I'll give some short stories a bash. And and I've only really been doing it since January last year, and it's going really well. I think I've just about 60 short stories, 2 novellas in that time. So it's going well.
Yeah, good for you guys. All right, next.
That's me, isn't it?
Yeah,
okay.
that's you.
Just making sure. Okay. Okay. So why did I start writing short stories? Okay, because I've written quite a few novels that I've done nothing with, and I'm really intimidated to do anything with them, so they're just kind of hanging out. And I wanted to try and get something published that was a little less high pressure. So I actually originally got published writing smut. So
My
yeah.
favorite genre.
Yeah. So because I was like, well, if I get rejected, it's like,
Like, who cares?
okay, I got rejected for writing smut, so like
Yeah.
I'm not gonna like cry or anything. I mean, yeah, that was kind of my like little foot in the door. And then after I successfully published some smuts, I moved on and kind of like worked my way up. Like I did like some that were just romance with, no smuttiness, and then gradually I got out of that, and then did some I've done fantasy and some sci-fi and horror now, which are like the things that I really do enjoy. It's just that now I feel like I have a thick enough skin that it's not going to break my heart when I get an inevitable no.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have not published like 400 like the other people here. Like you guys are insane. What the heck?
The
Gosh.
Bravo-
Is it cocaine? Like what is your secret?
You don't say that on a recording.
Oh,
Yeah.
just send me a message.
I'm like,
okay?
we are live.
I've got
No.
coffee
Everyone's
on
like,
drip.
no, not cocaine, not cocaine.
No.
Yeah.
No, I wish I was that productive, but unfortunately, no, that is not the case. And then, authors who have influenced me. I actually am really terrible. I have not read a ton of short stories. I started reading I think Sci-Fi magazine, or I think they do like or one of the major ones does like an anthology every year of like their top stories that they've published. And I've read my way through a few of those. Kind of when I started actually like trying to knowing that I was going to write something that wasn't going to be just like hot trash. So, yeah, and that kind of helped a little bit, like understanding more like how the genre works and the technical bits. So
Yeah. That's awesome. All right, Chris, what about you?
What started me writing? Well, I started writing a couple of years ago. I was blogging just for something to do. And I came across a writing prompt like you do on the WordPress platform. There's lots of people who organize writing prompts in various communities on there. And someone finally, you see them all the time saying, oh, why didn't you have a crack? If you've never done it before, have a crack. And I finally came across one, had a go at it. I quite enjoyed it. So then I sort of did that for about a year, writing, a few stories a month. And then this year, I started getting things published and starting to do a little bit more structure around it. So I've only really been writing for 2 years, which is similar to, I think, some of the tales here. And who's influenced me? I don't know. I guess John Wyndham, for those British sci-fi fans. Obviously Lovecraft. Roald Dahl. I love Roald Dahl. And I don't mean the kids' books. They're very good. But I mean the adult books, which are even better and doesn't get enough credit for. So, everything's got to have a twist in the tail.
Yeah.
Very cool. All right, Joel, you're up.
Yes, I think this question's quite interesting because I've been asked a couple of times when I started writing, but I think this is the first time it's specifically short stories, because for most of my life that I've been writing, not necessarily getting published, I've been trying to do novels, and in that typical kind of idealistic 13-year-old fashion, started a bunch of novels, was never able to finish any of them. So got to university without having anything really to show for myself, and I don't think I'd ever written proper short stories by that point. And then what changed it was I got into no sleep stories and creepypasta and things like that. So I started reading a lot more of those. Started trying my own, I think probably 3 or 4 years ago, and then kind of built on there. So that's really when I started doing short stories, and I found that because of just the way that I am, I get very distracted wanting to do a different project than the one I'm working on. So short stories are more manageable for me than novels, which I've still never successfully done.
Not a lot of people have.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
successfully.
Yeah. In terms of authors that have influenced me, mostly just what I was reading throughout my teen and university years. Terry Pratchett, Philip Pullman, Jonathan Stroud, Michelle Paver, Alice Walker. I think those are a lot of the main people. Just anything that really kind of spoke to me as I was reading it.
Yeah. Very cool. I'm going to answer one. Well, maybe I won't.
Go for it. Answer one.
I have a hard time writing a lot now, and that's because I'm weirdly enough stupid busy.
What doing what?
Yeah.
A little bit of reading.
Oh, I know. Publishing takes a lot of mental fortitude to just get through hundreds of submissions and things like that. So sometimes it's just I just don't have the time. But I only started writing short stories a couple of years ago, and the same thing was from no sleep. I had just had my daughter, and I was up until 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning all the time, and I just got into this, I guess, no sleep hole of where I went down the rabbit hole, and I was like, oh my gosh, these are awesome. It's really cool to immerse yourself in short horror. Before I had tried to write the elusive epic fantasy trilogy, which is still sitting in my drawer right here. I got to chapter 3 on 2 of them, so that's exciting. But yeah, so it's just immersing myself in the idea that I could put something out there and it would be read. And then I started submitting to different places, and I'm like, oh my gosh, people are getting these, and I'm being published, and I'm doing something for myself. And then it was like, hey, why don't I do this? And then this.
Which we're very pleased about, by the way.
It's been a lot of fun.
But you don't sleep.
This
was a question I asked her when I interviewed her the other week. It was just when do you sleep?
Yeah, I'm sleeping a little bit more right now because I have, for the others, all the other calls that we've done, except for C, I was one of the only ones reading every single story. I was the only one reading every single story that was submitted. So we're talking millions of words. So I would be up. The second she went to bed, I'd be up until 2 o'clock in the morning reading, and then I'd be up at 7 or 6, and I'd be reading until she wakes up. So
again with the cocaine.
I'm feeling kind of responsible for the impending mental health meltdown of never sleeping and just reading stories.
For C, because we had the extension for the dark fantasy call because we had that call out right when COVID hit. So we didn't really get a lot of submissions. So I'm like, okay, let's give this another month. But because we did that, we had the overlap of that and then the Drabble collection and then C. And I was like, oh my gosh, I am drowning. So we have some people helping read. I know. So thankfully, I have someone helping me, a couple people helping me read. So I am able to go to bed at midnight now instead of 2 in the morning. So,
it doesn't mean you do, though. You would message me after midnight.
Yeah.
You may be able to, but you're not.
I'm in bed, though. Anyways, that's it. Okay, I think we got one. We're going to do one more story. No, sorry, one more question, and then we're going to wrap it up. You have to be everyone get your books out. We're reading Chris's 9,000.
Yeah. We'll all settle in.
I know. Now that we're comfy. But we'll make this quick because we are a little bit over time, and I know when people have stuff to do. So on that note, also, this is about disciplining yourself. So everyone has 30 seconds to answer. No, it's okay. Do you ever have trouble disciplining yourself to make sure you don't take the stories too far in terms of length, Tim, and complexity? I did it.
Yes.
Anyone can start. Just put your hand up.
I may as well. Yes, I do have trouble. I have lots and lots of trouble with it. Yeah, I'm completely undisciplined. See what happens. That's yeah.
Someone just barked. I mean, knocked at my door. So this is. I'm muting myself.
Who's next?
Yeah.
She's muted herself.
Oh, no.
You, go on, Joel.
Right. Yeah, so basically very similar to Tim's answer. Yes, I do have trouble with that. In fact, I think one of the best decisions I've ever made as a writer is the one novel that I got furthest into. So I got 50,000 words into a novel, and I realised that it was too big a project for my ability at the time. That it was too complicated, that it wouldn't work as a debut novel, and I made quite an emotionally difficult decision to just shelve it and say, no, that's just going to wait a few years until I'm better as a writer and I can actually reevaluate it. And I'm so pleased that I did that. So I think sometimes we do have to actually say, no, this thing I'm working on, it's too complicated for what I'm trying to do. And I just need to take a step back and do something a bit simpler. So, yeah.
So, like you, I have a novel that I've rewritten 3 times because I go back over it and it's too long or it's out of control or there's too many subplots. So I did the same thing you did and just set it aside for now. I did have trouble, but I'll tell you, working on a bunch of drabbles, which is exactly 100 words, will rein you in. You start learning how to get a little more succinct and still have that hook that you're looking for. And I'm finding now that when I go back to edit, I only have to get rid of like 5 words. But if you take the leash off and you tell me, oh, this is up to 15,000 words, I'm going to write 18. And then I have to go back and trim it down. So for me, it's all about the story itself and what the call is asking for as to how far off the rails I go.
I had a kind of a come to Jesus moment when I'd finished my first novel, and I ended up talking with an editor for free at at a writing convention, and she was talking with me about the story and was asking me how I developed certain themes in it or whatever, and I'm like, oh yeah, I did that, and she's like, how long is your book? And it was supposed to be like kind of a starter new adult kind of urban fantasy. And I'm like, oh, it's 250,000 words.
So it's like 6 books in one.
So she was like, so that is unmarketable. You can't do that. And I was like, but I just read the whole Wheel of Time series, and each of those books was 250,000 words long.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was like
Robert Jordan.
Yeah. I was like, well, Robert Jordan does it. I can do it too. And it was such a ridiculous lesson that I became obsessed with. I'm gonna do this as soon as I possibly can. I'm gonna go from point A to point B to point C, and I'm gonna do it as efficiently, communicate my themes, get the plot in there, and done. So I'm glad that I don't struggle with that anymore after that scarring incident. So yeah.
God, I wish I had 200,000 words just sitting around in any order. So yeah, my situation is, in fact, I keep seeing calls for drabbles, as I think Kim was saying. They're brilliant in terms of you've got to get in and out and deliver a story. And I can see Tim shaking his head there. It's just unthinkable to him.
I struggle with drabbles.
But then there's a lot of calls coming out that are 250, 500s, which are interesting because you get to explore a little bit more. Still have problems with it, and all that happens is it starts off as a drabble and it ends up as a 500-word story, or it's 500-word story turns into a 2,000. I think there's so many stories going on at any time that you just mix and match really, rather than try and squeeze them in when they're clearly not going to fit.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I just pop in with my own little question that occurred to me while you were asking that? I wonder what is the word count that each of us finds most difficult? Because funnily enough, I find drabbles easier than between 500 and 1,000. Because for a drabble, I know that I can trim out all of the... I don't need to describe the character. I don't need any... it's just straight to the point. 1,000 words I really struggle with because if I just write it like a 1,000-word Drabble, it feels like there's no weight to it. Yet 3,000 plus, not easy, but not challenging in the same way.
No, I agree. I think there's a gap. Sort of, there's a kind of 3,000 to 5,000, maybe up to 8,000. In Tim's case, probably up to 10, 15,000 for a short story. But there is a kind of zone in the middle. I think it's just down to practice or opportunity. Lots of Drabbles, hundreds and hundreds of Drabbles. Not too many of the 250s and 500s, so you don't get a lot of practice at it. But yeah,
I'm
I know what you mean.
with some of the 500 calls right now. Drabbles, I can knock it. I can sit literally back here with my phone, write a Drabble, send it off. We're good. I'm struggling with 500. I'm either going way over or I'm like, oh, it's 200 words. We need more.
Yeah, mine's 500. Last time I tried to do one, it turned into a 2,000 word story. I only got it down to 1,600 because I
just
put in 3 different characters, and I was just like, this is garbage. They accepted it, but still, it was
So it wasn't garbage. You're like, it was trash, but it won an award.
No, I just meant like it was so much more than what it was supposed to be. I'm like, well, they're never gonna take it, and they're like, oh, we loved it. I'm like, oh,
see.
I am like the opposite of all of you guys. Like if it's between like 15,000 and then like 30,000, I am just so challenged because it is like it's not as long as a novel, and it is so much longer than a normal short story. And so if I try to go to short story mode, it's like I don't have enough content, and then I'm like, oh god, I gotta add all this crap in here. And then if it's a novel, if I start put my novel pants on, you guys know what my instinct is, so I'm just like
300,000 words later.
Yeah, exactly.
that's the perfect length. Sell me that book.
You see, I actually think the novella length is my favorite sort of length, like to novelette to novella. I really like that length for a story. And I tend to, like I say, I'll start out writing something that should be 3,000 words and it'll end up a bloody novella. I do that sort of thing a lot. But I struggle with anything under sort of 3,000 words. I really do. I'm not very good. I'm not very disciplined. I'm not very good at holding back on that kind of thing. It's a different kind of discipline to be able to write something like that. You have to know when to go, right, no, I'm not going to use 18 words. Well, you listen to me. I write like I speak. Why use one word when you could use 15? I'm verbal diarrhea, I think, is the technical term. And I have the same thing with writing.
When I write. It's very difficult to...
Yeah.
You have to give yourself a couple days to go back and be like, take out this 17 paragraphs and just leave 7 because it's too much. But anyways, we're definitely past the hour point. But it's been great having you guys here. I did get just a text message from a David Green, just in case anyone knows him. And he said he can't make any comments. And he said, stream is great. He can't ask any questions for some reason and say hi. So
hello, David.
Hello, David.
And hello to everybody else that's joined us. Thank you so much for being here. We're really excited to be able to put this on, and we're really excited about this book. We hope that you go out and buy one. Like I said, we've got paperback.
Please buy one.
I know. I know. We need to pay for it. So we've got hardcovers. This is the hardcover. You can tell it's like nice, crisp white paper on the inside for the hardcover ones.
Yeah, they're sold out at the minute in the UK. I went to buy mine earlier. They're sold out.
Well, you buy it for me, silly. But I don't know why they're saying sold out, because it is live on Amazon, and you should be able to buy it elsewhere as well. But yeah, so thanks for joining us. Like I said before, we've got a contest going on. So if you see this stream, make a comment on it. Tell us what you're scared of the most. Follow us on YouTube. That'll get you 2 entries. And then on our Facebook page, I will have a contest link on there as well. Actually, I think I have a contest link on there. So just follow there, share it if you like it, and you get 2 more entries. And hopefully one of you guys will get an It Calls from the Sky paperback signed by the one and only Tim.
Hello.
Or an ebook and all the other fun stuff too. So we've got someone
Cool.
that's scared of crane flies. They're terrifying.
They are.
Rainfly.
It's that time of year as well. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, guys, you have fun. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for being here.
Thank
And
you.
well done, everybody. Like, woo-hoo. Thank you.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Bravo.
Exactly. All right. Ending broadcast.